Okay, I believe we are live. Welcome everyone to the Make Volume 90 launch party. I'm David Groom, community editor, sometimes known online as iShot JR. Here's our fabulous Volume 90 issue. The special topic this month is animatronic scares. We bring characters to life for Halloween, movie making, live shows, and more via the wonder of animatronics. From Evil Dead deers to mechatronic eyes, we show you how to reanimate all manner of creepy creatures. Plus, over 33 projects, including using projection mapping to turn your house into a giant animated screen, an EMF audio amplifier to help you explore hidden frequencies, and hacking a monster toy to create a whimsical desktop status light. Um, I'm seeing some chat that there might be some audio problems. Can you guys, can everyone hear me okay? All right. All right. I think we're okay then. So we have six wonderful panelists from the pages of Volume 90: Jesse Velez, Evan McMahon, Catherine Connell, Darcy Neal, and Luke Eisman. I said six. I guess I'm the sixth. We have five. And I just wanted to again remind you the reason we're doing this is Make Volume 90 is on newsstands right now. If you don't already have a subscription, which I think if you're part of this webinar, then you are a member. But if you are watching this on YouTube, then I suggest that you pick up a copy in the Maker's Shed or Barnes & Noble. And you can also subscribe at make.co. The other thing I want to mention is we have a Discord server where you can join us for the after party. For participants, I've just pasted that into the chat, and I put it into the wrong chat though. I'll put it into the right chat for you. And if you wish to do so, you can join us on the Discord server after the after party if you have any follow-up questions or just want to hang out or learn about some of our projects. So my first guest is Jesse Velez. His piece was Terrifying Taxidermy. Jesse is a designer, fabricator, and co-founder of Raptor House FX, making things for film, television, live entertainment, virtual reality, and specialty creative industries. He's crazy for movies, sci-fi, and art in all its forms. Hi, Jesse.
Hey,
How's it going?
doing good. Glad
I
to be.
could fill the 10 minutes just talking about the stuff in your background, I think.
There
I mean,
are a
your
lot of,
literal background.
yeah, we are a specialty fabrication shop in Denver, Colorado. And we do primarily animatronics design for film and television. So we build a lot of creatures and monsters and weird things. But we also do armor and specialty props, and we're kind of an all-in-one effects house.
So tell us about your piece for the magazine with this Evil Dead deer.
Yeah. This one was really exciting. We had a repeat client out in LA, down south in Costa Mesa, actually. And they were opening a horror themed axe throwing bar. They wanted to pull in references from a lot of different 80s horror films. So they sent us a video from Evil Dead 2 of the laughing deer head on the wall and wanted to see how we could bring that to life for their space. So the idea was to have a taxidermy deer above the center of the bar that would kind of act as a cuckoo clock for the space. And when you first come in, it's not obvious that he moves. Um, but about every hour, he goes through a little show. His eyes light up and he laughs uncontrollably and then goes back to his static state. So
Yeah, so I remember reading the process of how you created the motion. I thought it was fascinating because it's not just a head, it's not just a stuffed head
yeah.
with some eyes. It's it's very specific. It has very specific motion that you kind of painstakingly created. Can you tell us a little bit about how that process?
It does. There's actually a companion video to the article too. You guys can find at the end of the article. There's a QR code that links to that, goes through the whole process of how we did each of those things. Um, but essentially, by we first figure out like what pieces we want to move, isolating what components are going to do what. So He has the large neck movement, then he has a head up and down movement, and then he has a jaw movement. So it's a pretty simple three-axis system. And individually, those don't do a lot, but when they're all moving at the same time, he feels really alive. So that's always the first step when we create a character is determining how many axes of movement he's going to have. And then also taking advantage of something we call free animation. So he has a like long fur hanging under his neck. Um, Jim Henson used a lot of free animation, all of his characters. Big Bird has feathers on his head because when he moves, they move extra. Um, so that kind of stuff adds to that character life as well.
I love it. So, I mean, you say it's very simple, but I thought it was amazing the way you put it together. So can you tell us, my area of interest is sort of, the electronics and things like that. Tell us about the servos, tell us about the microcontroller, what's going on there?
Yeah, so we actually partnered with a company called Mechatronics, which you guys have featured a few times in Make.
Definitely.
There's a little call out in this article for them because we were kind of figuring out this project on the fly. If we know what the parameters are well ahead of time, then we can use different systems. Mechatronics is really good at making changes while we're working on site. Um, so that's really the control system. All the animation software is on their board. This one's called an Itsy Bitsy. They actually have a new one coming out very soon that's profiled in the article as well. And then all of the servos in our Deer are from Reefs RC. Um, and they're the primary neck servos are these 777s. I have one right here. These are incredibly strong for their size. They're all metal. Um, We've done tests in the shop where if we gear these right, you can lift up a person with one of these. Uh, and they're meant to last forever. So this was an installation piece. So we wanted to make sure with stuff that could be put up on the wall, not have to touch it for a long time.
That was one of my questions is, this isn't just for one shot in a movie. This is for every hour on the hour, for years on end. How do you is there any kind of maintenance or diagnostics or anything that the team at the Axe place has to do or
We have done one repair actually just yesterday. I think that the deer knew we were going to talk about it. And he stopped moving. It was actually an external step down um, capacitor that actually had died, but the motors were all fine. Basically, just make everything modular and nothing is glued in place ever on a project like this. Generally, like you were saying, our pieces only need to last a couple days or a few hours on set if we're shooting a movie. And there's a very different approach designing something to be long lasting. So he's been operating for almost a year now. It'll be a year in October, and he's been doing well so far. He should last another few years.
I love it. Okay. Now I do want to ask you about some of the things in the background, if we have time.
Yeah.
I see some. I'm not going to try and guess what they are in case I'm wrong, but tell me about some of what these things are.
Big item here up on this shelf. Four hands are what's left of Thing is
Yes.
actually on the cover of volume
Oh,
85.
I don't have. Oh, he's got it. Excellent.
Um, he will be back at Maker Faire, Bay Area Maker Faire in October. Um,
And just to clarify, that is a radio control thing that can walk around on its fingers.
yeah, so that was a huge project for us a couple of years back, helping to advertise the Addams Family Wednesday series. We made four hands, two walking hands over here, and then two hands that just do hand poses. And those are all direct input radio controlled. Um, Crazy, crazy project.
So people in the chat are saying Master Chief. So let's hear about that.
Do a lot of stuff for fun for ourselves. We also do a lot of like concept pieces. We help companies develop collectibles. Sometimes we make things that are just going to be used for visual reference. This suit was made by one of our guys here in the shop. There's all kinds of characters around. There's other ones over here. Um, but we do a lot of character costumes. We do pieces for commercials and corporate agencies, and it's really quite a variety. And then this is a Bigfoot mask, a bee casting. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of different stuff. Every day is different.
I was trying to figure out. I thought I was trying to figure out if I recognized the face on that one or like why does that
No
seem familiar? But
character.
and what's the fabrication on the Master Chief? Is that 3D printing or like
Yeah, these are
vacuum
both
forming or
printed. We do both. This suit has a lot of vacuum form components in it as
Mhm.
well. Um, we have a big room full of 3D printers just over there. So kind of anything you can think of.
Keith's joined us. Keith, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, hi Jesse. I was just flipping through the new issue. You know, we have a lot of animatronics projects in here, and some of them using some different systems. Evan will be on in a minute to talk about another system that he's designed for programming animatronics. But um, you know, putting together this issue, we kind of did a little dive into the history of animatronics, and so many people in the field have a similar story to tell, which is they went to Disneyland
Yeah,
and their mind was blown when they were a kid, and they're like, that's what I want to do. I'm just
absolutely.
curious, like what is your path, um,
Yeah,
into props and animatronics as a specialty?
the short answer I usually give people is that I had too many interests and I didn't want to choose between them. Um, I have always been crazy about art, engineering, and movies. And getting to do all those things together really brought all this stuff together. But I knew I wanted to make stuff for entertainment since I was like 8 years old. As soon as I understood that somebody got to build the Millennium Falcon as a job, that's the job. That's the job I want. So, and really getting to pull off magic tricks for people. We're doing a lot more of these like in-person um, creatures. The deer head is cool because we get to go see it. A lot of the times when we do stuff for a movie, it'll get shot and put in storage forever. It may not end up on screen, no matter how much work we put into it. So getting to do these real life things, even Thing was made for real appearances, is this extra level of magic, I think.
That's great. Yeah, I remember reading, oh, gosh, before the internet, you're reading,
Cineplex,
Starlog and Cinefex, and like
yeah.
that was the only way to find out, like, who are these people behind Star Wars and behind,
And
Alien.
it's still a
How
very
did they do
small
it?
group of people. It's
Yeah.
not a lot of people that are crazy enough to say yes to things that haven't been done before. So
Well, a lot of us are jealous that you get to do that. Like that was also my dream job when I was 10 years old. You get to do it.
it's the best.
Yeah.
So Jesse, I don't know if there's any if you want to plug anything, if there's you mentioned you got some videos on YouTube, you could drop in the chat perhaps.
Yeah, we have really just this companion video for this article. We're going to start sharing a lot more of our stuff. It's not really been something we've done in the past. A lot of our projects cannot be shared publicly. We're trying to change that and do more things that are like conceptual, helping people understand how this stuff is made. I think there's a lot more excitement for behind the scenes on this stuff. Um, and then the other big thing is we're going to be at Maker Faire in October, Bay Area Maker Faire. We're bringing a whole bunch of things. So all of our stuff here in the lobby is going to come with us. Um, yeah, we'll have a lot to share there.
Awesome. I we should have plugged that because I think this is the last launch party that we'll be having before Maker Faire Bay Area. So let's actually take a chance to do that right now. If you want to see Jesse's cool stuff in real life and hundreds of other cool things, Make It Fair Bay Area is October 18th through 20th. We're at Mare Island again this year, and tickets are available right now. And I believe that the call for makers is wrapped up. But if you're interested in participating, then get in touch as well, and we'll see what we can do for you. Okay, I just want to remind people as well, we have the Q&A. I see a lot of people posting into the chat. Someone says, what does the deer look like? That's a great point. We should have showed that off at the beginning. I think I flashed it up real quick, but yeah, Keith's got the deer, I've got the deer, and it looks like various incarnations depending on how it's lit. It's got all different modes and things like that.
Does.
So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to share about that, Jesse, but
I don't
that is
think we mentioned the inspiration for that,
I did
dear.
quickly at the beginning that
Yeah,
Evil
okay.
Dead was the
Yeah.
pole. This one looks different. He's modeled off an English red stag, so he's actually really large. Um, and we bought a taxidermy form to get his scale correctly, and it's quite a process of going through all those things. But the link to the video is great. It's a lot to explain, but the video is pretty good.
yeah,
Well,
well,
it's a
check.
big
Ah,
Yeah.
help. We try and do, sorry, we try and do still imagery in the magazine for
Yeah.
animated projects. And so there's just only so much you can get across in print, and seeing the behind the scenes video is awesome. Just watching testing the neck motion and am I getting the right wiggle on the fur? Am I getting the right jaw? That just watching you guys kind of iterate and bring it to life is cool.
somebody has made use of the Q&A facility, which I appreciate. What were the servos that you're using? Triple Z?
777.
Triple
Reefs are,
seven.
I cannot recommend these guys enough. This might be mirrored for you guys, but this is what they look like. Um, Reefs RC 777s drive his major neck movements, and then these tiny little 99 micros drive everything else. Um, Incredibly high torque. These are designed for RC rock crawlers.
So they're all like Metal Gear,
All metal.
heat sink. Yeah.
They run forever. They don't get hot. And we've never had to replace one of these in any of the projects we've ever done. So big plug for Reefs RC.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you had anything else you wanted to say, share. Oh, what? Whoa.
Other one?
So, Wayne Seltzer, hey Wayne, says PWM control, just like $2 servos. And just to
Yep.
unpack that a little bit, PWM pulse width modulation is what most servos use. You don't have to really worry about it when you've got like a radio control card, but underneath the hood, that's what they're doing. And you can also do that from an Arduino or whatever. So Wayne's question is basically, is it PWM?
It is PWM. These are also fully programmable. They come with their own little adapter cord. And there's like a very simple free software that goes with them just to set your limits for each one. And they're just extremely easy to use. So most of the time we're doing just direct input from the radio control. We don't have to do that much programming, but they work really well for that too.
Just touch on again the Baconic system that we were talking about earlier. So you kind of train that by doing the real thing you like do the
No,
motion. Oh,
no, Baconics is different because it's designed as a product development platform.
yeah.
It can do a lot of things we're not using here.
Mhm.
And it's all timeline based editor, like you would be editing a video.
Mm.
There's a call out in the article about that as well. But we are essentially, we always animate a piece by hand first, just to get a sense for what we want it to look like.
Okay.
And then pay attention to those values and then go back in and add them into the timeline.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing Beconix does in that the interface is kind of a digital twin setup where you tell it which servos you have and what the geometric arrangement is, and then you can kind of tweak your timeline with a digital twin of the hardware, which is something we'll talk about again with
Yes.
Evan,
Yeah.
in a moment. Yeah, it's really cool.
Stuff is amazing. So it's great.
Well, what a great segue. Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, of course.
And let's bring Evan in. Evan is a lifelong theme park and animatronic lover based in Seattle, who's translating 20 years of game development experience into tools that make creativity in animatronics and robotics more accessible and fun. And Evan is doing that with the Bot Tango software. Hey, Evan.
Hey, thank you for having me, David and Keith. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Tell us about Tango and tell us about animating little glow-in-the-dark ghosts.
Yeah, so I'm Evan. Thanks for the intro. And yeah, so my background basically is I've been in the world of video game development for about 20 years. And yep, there are my little little ghosts that you can Um, and basically, I've always been a theme park and an animatronic lover. So, gosh, at this point, about 8 years ago, I first started trying to build my own animatronics and kind of learn that art form. And the first thing that I kind of realized, kind of right from, day one, was that there's a lot of tools in the world of digital creativity for how to create a performance and a character that felt like they could easily translate over to, how to create a performance in a real world physical, robotic, or animatronic character. But that sort of leap hadn't quite been made over, or at least if it was a lot of kind of like putting a bunch of tools together that weren't really designed for the job and kind of hoping that they kind of get there. So my history in game development is actually principally around UX design and helping, just create interfaces for the end user and also in, sort of creating the right tools for our, fellow game developers. So for me, I knew that if you give a really powerful tool to a artist, they're going to make something a lot cooler than if you give them a hammer and a chisel, right? Not to say that you can't make cool stuff with a hammer and a chisel, but there's the a lot of times, great artists or great creative people are kind of held back by the tools that they've got rather than, and I wanted to make something that made getting the creative vision or the performance of your character in the real world more kind of easily done. And I wanted to do it in a way that to me felt like it was learning from the way that you animate characters for video games or movies or TV or any kind of 3D digital performance because there's been decades of learnings about what kind of tools are useful for that kind of creativity and as well folks that maybe have background in that kind of art would be able to maybe more easily make the jump over. So that's why I started developing Bot Tango, which is my free animatronic software. And I've been working on that since then, kind of developing it and growing the community of folks for it. Basically, what it is it's free. It's inspired by that workflow of how you would animate, and it's meant to be hardware agnostic. So it's not like you have to run Bot Tango's motors or controllers or whatever. It comes with open source drivers and it runs on pretty much any, Arduino compatible microcontroller or whatever. So you can just kind of get in and animate. And then when Keith reached out about doing something for the magazine, I wanted to think about one of the things I've learned in the Bot-Tango community is that when folks kind of first start trying to get into building and designing their own animatronics, they make a similar mistake to what I see with folks when they first try and start making video games. They think, oh, I loved this big MMO, so I'm going to make a big MMO. Or, oh, I love, the Shaman of Songs at Disney World. I'm going to make this, 600 point of articulation giant thing. And I started thinking about, well, some of my favorite animatronics are some of the ones that have a lot of the storytelling built into the mechanisms rather than sort of this platform of being able to do anything. For example, one of my favorite animatronics I like to point to is uh, uh, this little dachshund at The Secret Life of Pets up and down, and it makes it look like he's kind of getting a scratch from the stand mixer and he's got a big smile on his face. Maybe 2 or 3 points of articulation, but it tells such a really fun story that, from such a simple build, that's kind of what I wanted to start thinking about. So for the magazine, I came up with a really simple build that's just two characters that could only move a small amount. It's two little floating ghosts. Each ghost can move up and down, look left and right, and tilt forward and back. So, they can't open their mouths, they can't blink their eyes, they can't reach out and grab something. But with just these two characters that can do this kind of up and down, I wanted to kind of find a way to tell a story with these two and let them react to each other and go from there. So that's what's in the article is the Singing Ghost project, which I also wanted to keep it as accessible as possible from a tools perspective. So it's all 3D printed and just like a few bolts and nuts and that kind of thing. So it doesn't really need anything that you couldn't get off of Amazon or you might already have in your maker closet.
And you said it's hardware agnostic, but also you do make some hardware to make it kind of easier for people to get into this stuff, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, the way basically the company works is the software's free, and it runs on open source hardware. But if you want things that are kind of easier to get into the art form and kind of start to learn animatronics, I do sell things like the servo shield, which is something that plugs into any Arduino Uno and allows you to kind of power your servos a lot easier without having to deal with, building your own power circuit or something. Or we even have Maxwell, which is an animatronic in a box kit that has everything you need to build out and kind of learn animatronics from there. So, like I said, you can run on any hardware you want. Folks have, come with their own custom microcontrollers they built and pretty much just been able to go right from the start with what they got. But yeah, in the article, I do kind of have instructions for using my servo shield to make powering it easier. Yeah, there's Maxwell. Yeah. But you are not at all restrained to using that. You can use, there's Servo City has a power board. You could use, a breadboard and some wires and a power supply if you kept your current a little lower. There's that PCA 9685 Adafruit servo driver that's very popular that can be used with Bot Tango. There's lots of options.
And so you were
let's
talking.
talk,
Oh, go ahead,
sorry.
Keith. Go.
I wanted to ask you, let's talk a little bit about Bot Tango because, I just wandered through it was the storehouse building at Mare Island at Maker Faire last October and came across, I had no idea, came across Bot Tango and was immediately amazed because I'm looking at what looks like, game animation timeline on screen, and in real time, the robot, the animatronic is actually doing the exact same motions as the animation on screen. And
Yeah.
it just intuitively, said to me like, this is not a tool we've had before to animate hardware, and it's tapping into all the skill sets that animators already have and 3D modelers have, like, and it's free and open source. Anyone can go grab it and learn to start doing animation and animatronics right now.
Yeah, why don't I screen share really quick the Ghost
That would
project
be
in
great.
Bot
Yes.
Tango, and we can kind of take a look at it. When you go to the website that I set up with, which has all the model files and stuff, it also comes with a project file set up where everything is kind of ready to go, where you can sort of see the range of motion of the different characters, and they're all set up with the servos and stuff. But then, yeah, I mean, here's the example animation where it comes in and animates on a timeline the way you would animate, a traditional game character. And as you're animating here, it'll animate your real world characters. Or you can come over and create, a really base, create your animation. Let's, start with he looks over here and he's down like that. And he's over here, right? I've created keyframes along a dope sheet, move up, move back, move over, right? And I kind of scrub back and forth. So, with those sort of simple clicks, I've created a simple animation. So let's back out really quick and I'll show here. Like, let's say, and you're not constrained to just what, I've already set up for you here. We'll do like a basic, uh, robot structure, if you will. I'm moving really quick just to kind of show the idea, but there's a lot of documentation and community about how to do all this. So, all right, so now I've got a joint that can move this bit here. I'll add a servo. I'll put it on pin 3, which is what's hooked up to pin 3 of my Arduino. If you're familiar at all with Arduinos, that should make sense. I'll link this joint to the servo, and I'm going to go over here to my hardware setup. I'm going to update my Arduino because I forgot I'm on the wrong version. I actually even have it so it can just, if you have an Arduino connected, it'll put the driver right on it. So here it is, updating it. There we go. We're connected. We've got a servo on pin 3. And now, I'm not sure how well this is, you're able to see both, but as I move this part, right, it's moving the servo from here to here and here to here, right? So obviously this isn't a real robot, but you can see how quickly with just maybe like 8 clicks, I went from, having nothing to having animation along a timeline where I'm animating the position of the servo.
That's
And
amazing.
like
So
any, yeah,
do you have to so you're sort of generating firmware in Bot Tango that then runs on the Arduino. Do you have to flash the Arduino each time, or how does the Arduino update to know what the new sequence is?
No, so when great question. When I updated it here, I updated it so that it's able to communicate it with it live. So yeah, as I'm animating
Oh, so it's
here,
just
it's
over
any changes
serial.
that exactly. But there is an option to export out to self-running animations, so you can have it
Um,
run off on its own.
yeah.
And actually, in the next version, I'm adding support to have that be on like SD cards or things like that, not just as code, and including more robust audio support things
So
like that
the
too.
the workflow is you're doing it all over serial, completely live, and you can see exactly what's happening. And then if you want to make a little standalone, like the deer head that we saw earlier or something, you can then write that to the
Yep.
Arduino, and it'll just replay the
Yep.
interactions.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Exactly right.
Yeah,
And
and
there's a
that's why
whole
it
series
looks,
of API.
yeah,
Go
that's
ahead.
why it looks so great on the workbench, because you can just see what you're
yeah.
getting right now and adjust
And if
curve.
you were trying to do that by hand with a regular Arduino and C++, you'd be, oh, let me make that 17 degrees. Flash, wait. No, 19 no, like it would take so long just to like iterate on the different little animation experiments. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same kind of mental exercise I did when I first started, which was if I was working with an animator on a game and I said, okay, great, we need a really awesome performance from this character, here's C++, go nuts. It's like, would I have been doing the right job by my, animator friend? Or if I said, here's Maya or 3ds Max or, Blender or something like that, and let them use the tools there that are made for the job, right? And so that's why with Bot Tango, I wanted to, rather than just kind of like, you know, help, make it easier to write C++ animations. I wanted to make this visual editor, but I also wanted to, have this be something that was built from the start for animatronics and robotics, as opposed to something like Blender or Maya or 3ds Max that does a lot of things. And you can, and folks, I think, have done really cool things to make packages like that work well for animatronics and robotics. But I get a little bit of a head start, I think, with Botango because, for example, when that question you asked about, is it sort of sending it over serial or is it sending it, is it being kind of baked down into the code or whatever? Because I wrote the whole stack, including the application, when it sends over an animation over serial, it's actually sending keyframes with vector math about what those animations should look like. It doesn't have to quantize it down into little discrete bytes. And because it's sending those kind of the actual keyframe animation, like the animation engine that exists in the desktop application that runs on a computer, is the exact same sort of logic as what will run on the Arduino itself. So it can just eat keyframes and turn them into super smooth animations where your, frame rate isn't, how much you can kind of chunk it down into little bytes and send it over the wire. It's getting all the keyframes ahead of time packaged up and can do thousands of frames a second because when you're dealing with robotics and animatronics, smoothness is that smoothness of movement is the name of the game. Or similarly, like I built into the UI, if you make a movement where you're moving faster than you really want that movement to move, in the world of digital, who cares, right? You're kind of your cube will move really fast, but in the world of robotics, that can be a real problem if you could break something in the real world. So the UI I built of the animation timeline will show you in your animation like, hey, you moved too fast here, you might want to slow it down or something like that. So lots of little things I've done to be able to kind of optimize this application specifically towards robotics and animatronics.
We've only got a minute left. I wanted to just share that people in the chat are saying this is wonderful and so cool. No questions yet, but lots of positive feedback. Just a reminder, we do have the Q&A if you want to use it. My question though is, so earlier we were talking with Jesse about sort of the way to bring life via animation. I was wondering, does your tool have some of the traditional animation things like easing and tweening and things like that that you might
Oh
expect from?
yeah, let me
Oh
let me
yeah,
pull that back up because that to me is in some ways the kind of the heart of
yeah,
Bot Tango. So I'll pull it back up. All right, there we go.
Yeah, that's
Here we are.
that's
So we
that's
had
what that's what really attracted me to it was the keyframe where all the interpolation is being done for
yeah.
you. You define, you define the important positions, and then the software gets you from A to B.
Yeah, I mean, try doing that with C++ and Arduino. You're just going to be like
Look at
writing a
this.
bunch of functions and like, Robert says, as an animator in the games industry, I really appreciate this.
you're exactly the kind of folks I was hoping to kind of be able to bring over the skill set you already have and learn a new, learn a new hobby. So you can
And
see
just
here,
to,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and just to bring that to its conclusion, remind everyone where they can find this and how they can get started.
Yeah, it's at bottango.com. It runs on Mac, Windows, and Linux, and on any Arduino compatible microcontroller, from an Arduino Uno to an ESP32, Teensy, Mega, Nano, all of those things. I've tested a ton of them. Yeah, and it's totally free. And yeah, it runs on pretty much anything.
Robert wants to get started with Maxwell, so you made a sale.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
amazing system.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate you
so
guys'
much,
time.
Evan.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Catherine, aka Smalls, a self-taught maker based in LA and the creator of Sprite Light's wearable LED tattoos. Insatiably curious, she has learned 3D printing, CAD drawing, prosthetic making, sewing, watercolor painting, costuming, circuit design, PCB creation, and much more. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, how are you?
And I'm great. And I forgot to explain in all that list of stuff, none of those is what we're talking about tonight. Tonight, what we're talking about is your animatronic breathing.
That's right, but I will show off my Sprite lights because I have to every time I talk to anyone. These are my LED tattoos, so they are single use, but they last probably about 6 hours at absolute full brightness, and then 6 to 8, and then they slowly dim over time. I've had them on where I've opened like the drawer, and it's been like 4 days later. I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm like, and it's still on, just lightly. But as you can see, they're super crazy thin, and you just like peel off a backing and stick them on your body wherever you want. They're super cool.
I love it. And you asked when we were backstage if it was okay to show a Hackster page. That LED tattoo was
That's true.
from a co-sponsored contest between Make and Hackster, which you were one of the winners of
That's true.
to work with Kitty to get that into production. And so that was from last year's board guide. So yes, definitely that was awesome. I think I was one of the judges on that. I think
You were. I think you were.
I even picked.
I think also Catherine will be talking about those crazy thin batteries in the next issue of Make as well. We have a battery feature that we'll touch on those.
All right, but tonight we're talking about animatronics. What can you
We
tell us,
are.
Catherine?
So I got into companion bots after I went to SuperCon last year, where I saw Jorgis. I think it was Georges. I forget how do you say it?
Jorvan?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw his companion bot. I saw Nova. I saw some of Alex Glow's stuff, and I was just completely enamored. I've always loved like little creatures that have come to life, and I thought, hey, I'm gonna make one of those. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm gonna figure it out. And so that's how the project, the breathing mechanism, got into Make magazine in this last issue. And it's because I really loved everyone being so innovative with like the latest, greatest technology. I think there's like an AI fueled companion bot. I didn't want to do that though. I wanted to make it look as lifelike and as uncanny as I could. So I wanted it to have like this moment of that's cute, that's creepy, hey, that's cute, and like ultimately land on the good side of it.
In
And
that
so
order.
one of those things that I wanted to incorporate in it was the movement of breathing, because that to me is life, right? You can have something that's looking around, moving its ears, wiggling a tail, whatever you want, but when it's breathing, it's alive. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. I hadn't seen really anything like that.
Yeah.
And so the tutorial for Make was actually kind of like repurposed from my Hackster.io tutorial that I put up, which I'll share right now to kind of walk you through and show a little video of it working too. Okay, so you should be able to see it. So if we go back up here, if I click this, hopefully it'll show the animation of it moving back and forth. And so what it's doing is it has this center mechanism where the servo is mounted, and then on the outside of it are these panels that are kind of like chest plates by the springs. And so what it does is it goes inside like a soft body form, and then as it expands, as the servo turns back and forth, it expands and it contracts to make that breathing movement happen. And so it was a little bit fiddly, trying to figure out exactly what spring strength I needed, how small I could get it. My nickname is Smalls and I make small things. It kind of matches. But also just trying to figure out, what movement is good movement for breathing, because there's a lot of wrong movement for breathing. You can watch it and it looks really strange sometimes, like it's too fast, like it expands and then goes in, like they're having an attack of some kind or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the key to that was this library called Servo Easing, and I found this after
Oh,
much searching. And it's an Arduino library, and it was incredible because what it does is it includes, hang on, Zoom controls are in the way, there we go, is it includes these different patterns that you can use for how you control your servos. And so you can find the pattern for how quickly it speeds up or slows down. And you could like do little bouncy patterns and things like that too. And by playing with that, I was able to find actual lifelike breathing, which one worked best in the animatronic robot. And so this was key because before it was just me trying to like very carefully like step a servo. And if you've ever
yeah,
done that, you know it's stupid and
yeah,
impossible.
yeah,
It's not good.
yeah,
But this did it for you. It does all the smoothing in and out that you might need. And so this is great for a lot of things. I used it not just for the breathing, but I used it for the head turning, all sorts of stuff like that, looking up and down, making that stuff look more lifelike. And so this project, I would say, is reasonably beginner friendly. I am not an expert. Like I barely understand how to code in Arduino. I mostly steal snippets from other people's codes and then credit them in the comments that I took this piece from here and that piece from there and I made something new. And I think anybody can do it. And so it was a super fun project. And it was also one of the first projects that taught me that you need to rest your servos. Otherwise, you're going to burn out your servo, lock it, or melt your 3D print. So that was extra exciting. The mechanism inside my kit robot or my kit companion bot, it's a Fox, but it actually like froze and melted inside the first iteration that I did because I didn't have my servo resting at all. And because what happens, even if you have your servo in a neutral position where there is no perceived tension, if it's trying to hold even the tiniest bit of tension to hold a position, it will just work until it overheats. And so I actually turn my servos off completely in between functions and then click them back on when I go through the loop again. There's probably a better way to do it, but that's the way I do it to keep them from getting too hot.
no, this is awesome. So yeah, I'm in a group and I'm friends with um Jay and Alex and Angela and all the people that you're mentioning. And so like Alex, for example, has come up with like purring is one of the interesting little features and using like pager motors to make a companion bot vibrate. And Jay is like the master of kind of observing creatures' movements and then translating those into code and 3D printed things. But yeah, I never even thought about breathing. Or actually, I mean, in our discussions about companion bots, we've talked about sort of soft robotics, like pumping, but
Mhm.
never this. Like, where did you come up with? Like, how is this where you got? How's this? Where did this mechanism come from? I guess.
Gosh, that's really hard to say. Usually it's at 2 a.m. when I wake up and I'm just like, oh my God, I should do this thing. So that was probably one of these. And also, again, like where I was coming from was to make it as like lifelike, but as unsettling as possible. And to me, when I kind of drilled down, what are the movements of life? That was one of the key ones to do it. I think my specialty for companion bots is going to be taking traditional puppetry techniques and things that make things alive and whatnot, and put that
Yeah.
into something that you can like have on your shoulder, on your arm, or sitting next to you. I think that's going to be my specialty.
Yeah, Jesse was talking about Keith, do you remember the term? I don't remember, but the animation you get for free by just feathers moving and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you call it? I think you call it free animation.
Yeah, oh,
Dave.
okay. Easy enough. Just want to remind people we do have the Q&A if there's any questions people have for Catherine. Somehow we're really burning through time here. It's actually time up on Catherine's segment here, but if there's any questions real quick, let us know. Otherwise, thank you, Catherine. We'll see you in the after party and we'll hop over to Darcy. Darcy Neal is a new media artist, educator, and builder of custom interactive objects. With a background in sculpture, electronics, and experimental music, their work is focused on tangible sensory exploration through electronic interfaces and creating new ways of interacting with our world. Love it. Hi, Darcy.
Hello, good to see you here.
Good to see you. So, tell us about your project that interacts with our world in a very interesting way.
Okay, yes. So for the project that I wrote an article about, it is a device that lets you tune into the EMF, to the electromagnetic frequencies that are around you, which are otherwise silent. You're not able to perceive them in any way. So this was a way of kind of like giving you a sixth sense, so that way you can listen to the electromagnetic frequencies around you. And I also made it as a device that I could use for different soldering workshops. I love teaching workshops. I've been teaching them, I think, over 8 years at this point. And so this was one that I specifically developed to be used for different hacker and maker events. And it's been so much fun to teach workshops with. And then I was so excited to be able to write an article about it too, because the article explains if you don't have access to the PCB, you can build it yourself on a piece of proto board. And it goes through the schematic, it's all open source. So I just kind of get to talk in detail about like the nerdy details about EMF, which is just an endlessly fascinating topic for me.
And one of the coolest things, I hope you got a chance to see this as well at events, because I've been at a couple events where people have had these. But so, people go to the workshop on Saturday or whatever. Sunday night, I'm seeing people wandering around like, oh, let's this making a noise, and like everyone's like takes them around with them and listens to stuff for the rest of their life. It's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's meant to be super portable and you don't need to have any electronics background in order to enjoy it. So it's people of all ages. It's so much fun to see them discovering these sounds for the first time. It's just, yeah, the fascination is great.
So we touched on, we keep saying EMF, and you did unpack the term a little bit, but just for people who aren't into, electronics or physics or whatever that is, can you tell us a little bit more about like what that is, why it's being generated, things like that?
Uh, yeah, totally. It's electromagnetic frequencies. Some people call it electromagnetic fields. But it's basically whenever current runs through a circuit, just the act of the current, the EMF radiation is kind of like a byproduct of that. And so that is just like the radiant electromagnetic frequencies that are kind of coming off of the electronics around you. This particular device, it just has an amplifier on the back of it. So you're still listening to it at the same frequency that it's picking up at. And human hearing cuts off at about 20 kilohertz. It gets slower as you get older. Because 20 kilohertz is the higher pitch frequency. So you're only hearing things that fall within that range. So even though there's like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all of that, it's too high of a frequency, so you can't perceive it with your ears without using much more expensive electronics to bring it down to a level we can perceive. But so luckily for us, the majority of electronics are all operating within the same human hearing range. Our houses here in the United States run at 60 hertz. So that is perfect for you to be able to perceive it. So it's awesome. So that's why, like, you'll see, like you were saying, you see people that are going up to like light switches and outlets, or your cell phone has like 10 different sounds on it alone, because there's so many different functions happening in it. So it's just really fun to be able to kind of like tune into the circuit boards and circuits around you and just kind of get like an inside view of like what's going on. And of course, that's not taking any measurements or anything like that. You're just hearing it. And by hearing it, you can kind of understand what's happening. So like a Bluetooth device, like for Bluetooth headphones, you can hear it trying to connect to your phone or wherever the Bluetooth signal is. You can hear how it changes after it's connected. Then when you start transmitting music to it, that sound changes. So it's just so fun to kind of like get an inside view without having to have a deep understanding of electronics theory. So
Awesome.
yeah.
We've got a question in the Q&A. Thanks for using the Q&A. It's actually from John, who was another one of our authors who made the smart plant. I'll find that page and show it in a second. But John's question is, Which SMD LED did you use? Just a normal one placed reversed, or did you go with a specific package?
Oh, it's a through-hole LED. For
Oh,
the kit, it's all through-hole components. I don't know how well it shows up on there. But if you look on my website or on my GitHub, I have everything, like I said, everything's open source. So there's a close-up picture of the board on there and of the schematic and everything. So all the information is there. But this is all specifically through-hole. And I made it so that way it was very easy to assemble. Like the LEDs are color coded, the capacitors are all color coded with different pin spacing, so you can't shove them in the wrong holes. So I've had a very, very high success rate of people assembling their kits, which is always a good thing when you're teaching these giant workshops of
yeah.
30
It's
students.
really great.
So
I saw there was a massive room full, crammed full, maximum capacity room at Open Harbor Summit with people making these. And was it teardown as well? Did people make them teardown, or was that a dream?
No, I did a different PCB for
Oh,
teardown.
yeah,
So
yeah.
not for teardown. I did it at Tour Camp though, the American
Yeah.
Hacker Camp. So
I just wanted to mention since John had spoken up in the chat, check out John's piece, the Smart Plant as well. This is another DIY project, and the other thing about Darcy's project that I dropped into the chat but didn't get a chance to inject into the conversation is it's available in Makershed. If you do want to get that awesome looking PCB, you can pick it up in the Makershed. And Kristen said, I just purchased this, super cool, and can't wait to build one. So. There we go.
right. Excellent.
Can you tell us a little bit about that PCB design, about the process and I mean, because you could have just used a perf board and been done, but you made it extra cool. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. This past year, I've kind of been doing a deep dive on like how I can use PCBs as like little tiny canvases, so I was able to break apart the layers of the PCB and use it as different art layers. So the middle of it, the LED is shining through it because that's the bare fiberglass on there. So there's a blank spot on the solder mask, so that way it shines through. Um, and yeah, I drew all of the art. I used Affinity Designer in order to create the vector files for it. And I did everything in KiCad, however you want to pronounce it, in order to do the PCB design. And one of the tools that I found really helpful in order to do this is a tool called Gingerbread. I link it in all of the articles or
Yeah.
in all of the documentation around this. But that was a really helpful tool as like a medium bridge, the bridge between KiCad and between Affinity Designer and KiCad for seeing what the art layers are going to look like. And so I have other boards that I've designed too. This was a previous workshop board that I did that used all of the different PCB layers as art layers for it. And so it's just been so much fun, like designing new boards using this art process. It's great. And I mainly did it initially as an alternative to making enamel pins because producing enamel pins is quite expensive, but doing it as PCBs is very, very cheap. So this one is about 10 cents in PCB costs to make whenever you break it down. And yeah, it's just so much fun. It's like my new favorite art medium at this point.
I just dropped a link to Gingerbread into the chat as well. That is sort of a winter bloom side project, I believe.
Yes.
Thea, I think is the creator behind that. Dan says someone should do a workshop article on just artwork using the PCB layers. Yeah, yeah.
That's a great idea. This is one of the most beautiful PCBs we've ever seen, I gotta
Yeah.
say. We know artists who do PCB art as that's just their thing, and this is rivals anything I've ever seen. It's so cool.
Thank
Such a
you.
really great.
Such a compliment.
Yeah, we've had I would say Thea is someone that does a really nice job, makes some really beautiful PCBs. I know we've had her on the Hangout and Nerd Out show before, and Kelly Heaton is obviously kind of one of the biggest names in PCBs as art. I think she was even on maybe the same show or a different show. But yeah, I think incorporating the sort of uh just the artwork that you came up with for this and everything just adds like this like whimsical aspect to it where it could just look like a sort of boring box and do the same thing, but instead it's got this like brilliant little design on it that just makes you sort of even more excited to interact with it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I made the design specifically for the outdoor maker hacker camps that I like to go to. So it has a little camping scene
Yeah.
with a little dude with a laptop being abducted by the spaceship, and it's just taken off. People really like it, so I've just kind of been rolling with it ever since.
Yeah,
But
taken
there
off
will,
literally. Um, I'm being hassled that we're out of time. This is going by so fast, but I'm being told backstage that our time with Darcy is up. But
Before
we'll
she
have
leaves, can
some.
I ask you one quick question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we know that our devices are emitting in all kinds of frequencies, even beyond human hearing. So, if is my gigahertz Wi-Fi is I can still hear something coming from that. Is that harmonics that are down in the audible frequency range? Like
if
almost
you
anything we can point at is making some kind of EMF noise. Are those harmonics?
So if you're hearing something coming from your router, then it's going to be the components on board that are working to transmit that signal, if that's answering your question. So you're not hearing the actual Wi-Fi that's going out into the world, but you are hearing the components on board doing their best to spit that signal out there. So
It could also be like the power supply or something like that as well, right? Like there's like 10
Absolutely.
things it could be in that box.
yeah,
Yes. Power supplies are
definitely.
all making noise. Wait,
Yeah. Awesome.
all
All
right.
right. Thank you, Darcy. And we'll see you in the after show if people do come up with more questions or feedback for Darcy. But now our fifth and final guest, Luke, is co-founder of Make Sunsets. He very occasionally writes at lukeheisman.com and lives mainly around California, Baja, and Northern. And Luke's piece was Geoengineering in the Stratosphere, which I was just completely mind blown was a thing. And so tell us what on earth that is, Luke.
Yeah, thanks, David. It was only a thing in science fiction and in a couple research proposals till till we did it. And I talked to a bunch of the experts in the field who had written the research proposals. I talked to some of the sci-fi authors who had written about how this might someday happen. And I talked to a bunch of the Project Loon team when I decided balloons might make sense. And nobody had a good reason for why this hadn't been done. So
We do have
really,
kind of a sci-fi and horror theme today, and when I read this at first, this sounded like sort of like an evil like mastermind is gonna do this or whatever. I was like, wow, is this a real thing? So we haven't said what this is yet. Explain this.
oh yeah, I'll show you. So this is a smaller version of the balloon we use, and this is a different chemical. But what happens is it goes up in the sky, then eventually the balloon expands, and I don't know if you
Oh,
can see, that's a cloud of chalk dust, which some proposals use. We use sulfur dioxide, which is even more effective and less damaging to the ozone layer. But
hopefully it's less
yeah, we do
damaging to
that.
you inside your car that you're shut in right now as well.
Yeah, it's edible, so I should be okay. If I start choking, send help.
We'll just cut to a different guest.
um,
We'll just go back to Darcy.
right. But yeah, you mentioned like a Bond villain. There's actually, it was, I guess, not recorded, but I don't think it was totally classified. But several of the researchers in the field told me years ago there was a DARPA, the Defense Department, like planning thing where they fly in these experts and they
Yeah.
have different scenarios about like what the US defense blah 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 would do if somebody did solar geoengineering. And they had like, if China does it, if blah 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 does it. And then they had a rogue actor one and they called it Green Finger, like Goldfinger, but Echo. So
Really, they should have called it
That
Luke.
is
But
their new
so
code.
we skipped over another thing, which is why do this? Why would you want to do this?
this is the only, there are two things that, unless we have major breakthroughs in research, there are two things that can materially reduce global temperatures during our lifetime. The first is better than mine in every way except for two, and that is to put sunshades in space. The two are that it costs like $1 trillion and it would require a lot of geopolitical cooperation. So we're the best of the worst ideas. We're the one thing that we might conceivably do. readers probably already know this, but turns out that putting a solar panel or two on top of our houses is not enough. We need to do all those things, but we also need dramatically more deployment of things that we know work, like this, to directly reduce global temperatures. And we need a lot more innovation. So like the thing I really want people to take away from this is that, probably no one's going to stop you from experiment. The Mexican government might occasionally issue a press release naming your company, but they didn't technically ban it, and they said they'd weigh the risks and benefits of this technology versus not using it. So I'll count that as
That was one of the
progress.
most surprising things that I found about it. Like, it's a cool idea and everything, but like it's just a theoretical thing. Oh no, you're doing you're just going for it. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's even funnier because the chemical we use, airplanes emit the same chemical, sulfur dioxide. I think all large petroleum burning engines, definitely all large
Yeah,
diesel engines
diesel shipping is one of the great contributors of sulfur dioxide, and since they got more efficient, their efficiency has actually caused more warming because they're not polluting as much anymore. And,
yeah, that's one of those gee whiz unintended side effects. I had one of the lead scientists in the field help check my math on this. And I'm supposed to include a caveat, like when the atmosphere, when things reach equilibrium, that cleaner fuel in boats will make the world 0.06 C warmer. And if instead we move that sulfur that we're saving by requiring cleaner fuel in marine shipping, if we instead move that amount of sulfur to the stratosphere, which it's a lot of weight, and its stratosphere is 15 to 20 kilometers up typically. So it's a big lift. But if we move that, we actually don't know exactly what would happen. We know it would be well over half a degree Celsius of cooling, which, is a boring number, but moves us back into, way more inhabitable of a world and way less on average catastrophic weather events.
Two things from the chat. Someone dropped a link to the Neil Stevenson novel Termination Shock.
Yeah, this has been covered in sci-fi several times. That was where I first saw it. Then Kim Stanley Robinson's Ministry of the Future. And yeah, so I think
finished it a few weeks ago.
One of Cory Doctorow's books mentions it just in passing, and a couple others. But yeah,
awesome.
It's
another past guest, Cory. Catherine asks, what are the balloons made of, and do they biodegrade?
They are made of latex. They biodegrade over the course of 2 to 3 years. Oh. Eventually, we'll switch to larger balloons, like the ones that mine have a maximum lift capacity. They're basically large weather balloons. The biggest ones I can easily get are 4 kilos. And one gram offsets the warming of 1 ton of CO2 for 1 year. So, it's substantial. Like one of those balloons rivals months of the impact of some of these, $10 to $50 million carbon removal installations in terms of temperature for the year. They're very different. We need more of that. They're permanently removing the carbon. We're just dealing with temperature. But yeah, the big NASA balloons can do a ton at a time. They're made of different plastics, basically the same plastic as your, sandwich bags, like little Ziploc polyethylene bags, but way bigger. And those will either burn or recover. But yeah, people ask about what the balloons are made of a lot.
Another question from Douglas. Any concerns over acid rain with this approach?
No, I don't understand the chemistry behind it, but even detractors admit that if we do this at a scale of 0.75 C, there will be no material increase in acid rain. I think the biggest thing is the efficacy of this. It's 20x more effective per gram when we put SO2 at low enough latitudes into the stratosphere versus just releasing it from smokestacks.
And so, my various levels of like incredulity went from like, how is this the thing, to how is this the thing that's actually being done, to how are you able to do it? Like, where do you get the funding and things like that? And what's
Yeah, so initially it was just got tired of thinking about it and talking to people, and nobody had a good reason why I couldn't just do this. So it was, a couple $100 of Amazon purchases some weather balloons, smaller ones in that case. I think I used 300-gram ones the first time. Sulfur, which I burnt to produce sulfur dioxide, which is not how you should do it. You should just get a big tank of SO2 from your local gas supplier, or use calcium carbonate for experimental launch. But yeah, that and a zip tie and some helium, and I was able to launch. We had no telemetry on the initial ones, but you know, we didn't need it. We just wanted to see what would happen.
Someone in the chat says a recent New York Times article mentioned possible skin burns. That sounds like your initial experiment there that you.
Yeah, sulfur dioxide precipitates out in the presence of water vapor to sulfuric acid. So, you know, you don't want to breathe it without an acid vapor mask on. And yeah, it's not the best stuff, but you know, with all of this, with the possible pollution, if we switch to plastic rather than latex larger balloons, I think most of the criticism of this and other sci-fi sounding ideas, the efficacy of which is well understood, is assuming that we have pristine nature as an alternative. We don't, right? Everybody knows we have accelerating climate catastrophes. So, you know, when you do any cost benefit analysis of this and, you know, many other green measures, it becomes clear that, yeah, anything there's downsides, but, you know, we need way more action on climate. And there are tons of opportunities for makers, from things like adding solar panels to, you know, better electrolysis of seawater for greener hydrogen processes. There's all kinds of opportunities here. There's, you asked about funding. I was lucky enough to blab about this to so many people that one introduced me to a friend of a friend, not somebody that I already knew. And, you know, I felt out of my depth. I wasn't sure if this would made any sense as a company. But you know, blabbed about it and kept blabbing about it, and eventually someone decided to make a bet on it.
And you said your company, do you guys sell like like an alternative carbon offset, or what is the business aspect?
Yeah, 30-second summary of carbon credits. If they're voluntary, most of them are fake. 90% of them are fake promises to plant trees. And voluntary it's all just for marketing. Companies or individuals do it to feel good. So it's this super weird market. None of the registries, there's like voluntary accreditors of carbon credits who say, yes, this might not be fraudulent. None of them would work with us yet. So we came up with our own concept of a cooling credit. And, you know, we explain the math behind it. We sell them. They're pretty cheap in comparison to carbon credits. If people subscribe, they cost about $1 each, and that offsets the warming of a ton of CO2 for a year. Instead of a fake promise to plant a tree, we tell you what balloon launch reached what altitude and which of the specific cooling credits on it were yours.
Oh, that's
soon.
Cool.
Not yet. I have to lose many more RC airplanes first, but by end of year, we'll have video consistently of the balloons popping. Occasionally we recover one of our cameras and get it, but we're modifying RC airplanes. And a friend of ours, another make author, Johan, is way ahead of me on this.
Yes.
His actually work. Mine do not work yet. So sooner if I can get him to sell some to us or work with us, and months and months later, if I continue to not be nearly as smart as my 20-year younger friend.
We're almost out of time, but another question or two. Three more questions. Okay. Donald says sulfur dioxide is a major cause of acid rain. Please check your data. I believe the answer was that it's dissipated. You know, the only danger is when you're cooking it up initially and it's concentrated, right? Once it's dissipated, we're fine. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and the risk of acid rain per unit volume is dramatically lower compared to the cooling is dramatically lower when we're in the stratosphere. If we move if we move half of what we reduced from cleaning up shipping to the stratosphere, we end up likely over 0.5 degree Celsius cooling.
Got 1 minute left and
So,
2 questions left. First is Douglas. Helium is not cheap. What does a fill cost you?
Our balloons per launch are profitable. Average balloon carries 1,500 cooling credits, which sell for between $1 and $10 each. So call it $1,500 of revenue. Telemetry we get back sometimes costs about $50. The helium is our biggest expense by far per balloon at about $200, and the balloon is $60. So we've started experimenting with hydrogen. Technically, we should flare it. It is a very short-lived greenhouse gas, meaning we should just, light it on fire when it's in the stratosphere. Also, that might provide even cooler videos. But yeah, so when we switch to doing DIY electrolysis to produce hydrogen, it'll drop the cost to less than half of what it is now.
All right, we're out of time, but one last question. Where are you testing? Where are you doing this?
We used to do launches in Mexico, and now we do them mainly in South Bay, just outside of Saratoga.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We are out of time for the panel discussion, but the event is by no means over. So thank you to our guests for joining us for this initial portion.